Welcome back to Newsline, everyone. I'm Bianca De La Garza. It was a night of standoffs between Republican presidential candidates on the debate stage. One of the fiercest exchanges was when Nikki Haley went after Vivek Ramaswamy on foreign policy. Take a look.
A win for Russia is a win for China. We have to know that. Ukraine is the first line of defense for us. And the problem that Vivek doesn't understand is he wants to hand Ukraine to Russia. He wants to let China eat Taiwan. He wants to go and stop funding Israel. You don't do that to friends. What you do instead is you have the backs of your friends. Ukraine is the front line of defense. Putin has said once Russia takes Ukraine, Poland and the Baltics are next. That's a world war. We're trying to prevent war. Look at what Putin did today. He killed Prigozhin. When I was at the UN, the Russian ambassador suddenly died. This guy is a murderer, and you are choosing a murderer over a pro-American country.
Wow, listen to the cheers there. Welcome in now, Pollster McLaughlin and Associates. John McLaughlin joining us today, and also on our panel, spokeswoman for Trump, Liz Harrington, and Politico reporter covering the White House and Washington, Daniel Lippman. Guys, it's great to have you all in. I know you're up watching this, watching Tucker, watching Trump, so a lot to get to. But on the stage there, you just heard Haley with one of her, I think, star moments there, illustrating, some of the comments that have been made recently. And John, first to you, your reaction to that. Obviously, foreign policy is a big issue, but some of the things like the aid to Israel really were confusing to a lot of folks here.
Well, first of all, since I polled for Bibi Netanyahu in his last campaign and multiple campaigns, I'm very pro-Israel. But I'll tell you, they're just out of touch. This whole RNC debate, it was a sham. It was a disgrace. The leading front runner, we released a poll today. Donald Trump leads the field at 51%. Vivek's at second at 13. DeSantis is at 9. Haley's at 3. One-on-one, Trump's beating DeSantis 72-28. I mean, he's beating in this poll Joe Biden 47-43, which is why Donald Trump's being indicted again. The reason why the RNC debate and Fox News coverage was a sham, because they're trying to embarrass the frontrunner who's being indicted by his political opponent because he's ahead in the polls. This is what goes on in communist countries, not in America. If any of those candidates had any guts, they'd be with Donald Trump today, while Fannie Wills is arraigning him and prosecuting him because he's ahead in the polls. And the vast majority of voters, they want to decide the election in the election 56 to like 30, it's 56 to 34. They don't want the courts to decide. They want to vote. They want to decide the election. And you've got the Democrats, Joe Biden is basically denying their civil rights. He's denying the free elections.
And people want to hear things, too, that are important to them and not just the donor talking points, I think. The issue of abortion will be something in this election, especially with independent, females perhaps, and independent voters since, Roe v. Wade is no longer standing. Let's talk about this exchange. I want to play the clip between former Vice President Pence and Haley here talking about Congress passing a federal ban. Let's take a listen.
To be honest with you, Nikki, you're my friend, but consensus is the opposite of leadership. When the Supreme Court returned this question to the American people, they didn't just send it to the states only. It's not a states-only issue. It's a moral issue. And I promise you, as President of the United States, the American people will have a champion for life in the Oval Office.
Liz, what do you make of that? Abortion is such a key topic, and it's going to be one that keeps coming up, especially for Republicans and the messaging.
Well, Bianca, of course, it's an important topic, but the most pro-life president in history wasn't there last night. And as John just said so perfectly, this was a sham. I mean, the fact is, none of those people on stage are ever going to be president. So they're not going to affect change on this policy, but President Trump will when he returns to the White House. So what largely this debate was a bunch of noise and talk that might have played better back in 2012, say, when the Uniparty was happily running things before President Trump came along in 2015, 2016 and gave the American people a real choice, a real alternative. And now what are they doing? They're trying to throw him in jail. The reality of what's going on in this country was played out last night, and 200 million people and counting have watched it with President Trump's interview with Tucker Carlson. That's what people care about. They want to vote for President Trump. They wanted to vote in a free and fair election, and they don't want this country being destroyed with the rule of law being thrown out the window, trying to take away that choice from the American people, like we'll see tonight.
You know, Trump leading the polls big, and, you know, DeSantis really was, you know, having to perform last night. You know, the Florida governor obviously had the pressure on him, and this is his first chance to answer a question about education. Let's play that, and then, Daniel, I want to get your reaction after.
The decline in education is one of the major reasons why our country is in decline. We need education in this country, not indoctrination in this country.
We have a crisis of achievement. Let's shut down the head of the snake, the Department of Education. Take that $80 billion, put it in the hands of parents across this country. This is the civil rights issue of our time.
How do you think DeSantis did on the education? You heard him in the first part. Obviously, a lot has been talked about, you know, don't say gay in the state, you know, it's just parental rights here. And a lot of conservatives really like what he's been doing in Florida.
Yeah, education is definitely a strong suit for DeSantis, but I don't think it's enough to put him over the top. This is a major issue for people, but how people stand on Donald Trump, how they think who can be best to beat Joe Biden in November of 2024, that's going to be the most important. We've heard talk about abolishing the Department of Education for decades, has not happened, and we did not hear that much last night from the candidates about how to reverse the slide in the test scores for reading and math that we've seen the last few years, especially as, you know, America, you know, education is everything for our future economy.
Of course it is. But there was a lot of talk about Trump, and as many are asking, was he the real winner last night, even not being on the stage? Our John Gizzi, writing a column on Newsmax.com, writing that more than a few political prognosticators who do not have a favorite Republican candidate told Newsmax on Wednesday night that the true winner of the first GOP presidential debate was actually the contender who sat it out. So you can check it out, folks, and read that great article up online. And we appreciate all of you. Great analysis today, and good to see you, John, Liz, and Daniel. Thank you.
Thank you,
Bianca.